Hello, my name's Simon Tillotson, and this is a 5-minute recap, which I promised I would do. This time, though, I'm recapping a talk I did on Thursday recently, which was looking at Mary Magdalene. And the question is, was Jesus and Mary Magdalene, were they a couple that, like the Da Vinci Code says, who were married and lived in the south of France? Which is what the Da Vinci Code book says, or were they friends? Mary Magdalene obviously being a follower of Jesus. And does it matter? When we think of the Bible, perhaps the three most famous people who are presented as being single are John the Baptist, St. Paul, and Jesus. These three played a huge part in Christianity, obviously. Jesus, obviously, the most. Then John the Baptist and St. Paul in close succession after Christ. And traditional Christianity has always said that all three were single. And when I read the Da Vinci Code about 10 years ago now, I did quite a lot of research into this and read quite a lot of books. Professor Darrell L. Bock, research professor of New Testament Studies, Dallas Theological Seminary, wrote a really good book called Breaking the Da Vinci Code, where he wrote this: "In my office there are 38 volumes of early church documents, each of several hundred pages, double columns in small print. The fact that out of all this material, only 2 texts can be brought forward as even ancient candidates for the theory that Jesus and Mary were married shows how utterly unlikely it is." And in fact, if you go into the Gnostic Gospels, which is what the Da Vinci Code says is the main source for this this idea that Jesus and Mary were married, there are some very oblique references in the Gospel of Philip to Jesus kissing Mary Magdalene a lot, but actually, a lot of the text is missing from the original document. Also, in the Da Vinci Code, it argues that being single was looked down upon by that culture, when actually we know from the Essene community at the time, Essene, that these were often celibate single people who were looked upon as holy people. And the fact that singleness and celibacy was seen in a positive light in their culture suggests that it's quite possible within the Jewish culture, which Jesus was living within, that singleness as a holy vocation would have been looked up and seen as something special. But I want to make a much wider and deeper point, and that is that it's very important that Jesus, St. Paul, and John the Baptist were single because of our culture today. And our culture today in our society says, or makes people feel, that if you're not in a romantic relationship, there must be something wrong with you. That's what some people at least give the impression is happening in our culture. People obviously can feel lonely when they're single, but there is this temptation within our culture to say if you're not in a relationship, then, you know, there's something wrong. When actually some people are single and it's a very special state to be in. You can develop your relationship with God much more strongly if you're single, and you can develop your prayer life a lot more. You can grow in spirituality a lot more. John the Baptist, Jesus, and St. Paul, 3 of the best examples. Mary Magdalene, who was also single, became a follower of Jesus, was able to develop her spirituality. So the single life can lead to a much deeper spiritual growth. I was single for quite a number of years before I married Kathy. And it was during that time of being single, especially as a single priest. I was a single priest for 7 years, quite isolating at times, quite lonely at times, but times when I grew in my prayer life, in my relationship with God very strongly. But for couples too, this is an important message, because a lot of people today are struggling with their own relationships, with their marriages, or if they're not married, with the partner they live with. And often this is due to something called codependency, which again is a feature of our society. And codependency is when you are meant to get your support from your partner, and it's your relationship, your romantic relationship, which is meant to bring all of God's blessings to you. When actually marriage or a close, intimate relationship can never fully do that. We still need to grow within our relationship with our other half. We still need to grow our relationship with God. And in a sense, although we are still united with our partner, with our married partner, we also need to learn from the example of Jesus, Paul, and John the Baptist, and Mary Magdalene, and other single women and single men down the years who grow in their relationship to God through that personal, intimate encounter with God. And until you've actually developed that relationship with God, you cannot really survive a happy marriage properly, because in order to enjoy a happy marriage, we have to grow internally spiritually. We cannot rely upon our partner to provide all of the emotional and spiritual stability that we need. They are just not capable of doing that. And that's why it's important to me that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were not married, because they both grew in their spirituality. They both grew. Jesus, obviously being the Son of God, still grew in spirituality while he was on earth, and Mary Magdalene grew in spirituality, but they didn't actually need that romantic relationship in order for that to happen. Finally, men and women can be the closest of friends without needing a sexual or romantic relationship for that to happen. I am sure that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were very close. Mary Magdalene was at the foot of the cross. Sadly, in our world, because sex has become such a dominating feature of our society, that has become more difficult for men and women to have platonic friendships. But it's a very important part of life. If you can only be close friends with people of your own sex, then that's a big problem. We are called to be friends and to love everybody, men and women. Obviously, there are boundaries which we need to be careful about, but Mary Magdalene and Jesus show us that it is possible to have a close friendship based on love, based on spiritual love, which does not necessarily involve sex or romance. I hope that message is helpful.